In this video, I want to show you how to use teams to isolate students who require special permissions on a test or on any other assignment, such as a Dropbox or a discussion forum. But we're going to focus on tests because that's generally where students require special permissions. For example, you might have a student who requires double time on a test. And instead of creating a whole different test for that student, you simply put that student on a team and then you put all of the other students on a separate team. Before we do that, let's go to lessons and take a look at how a test is set up for the entire class. Come down here and we'll work with test number 4. And as I said, you can do this for any of your assignments, but we'll work with test 4. Take a look at the parameters for this test. This test is set up to display one question at a time. It allows only one attempt. Students cannot save the test. They have to take it all at one time, so I don't show the save button. They are limited to 45 minutes, and the test will automatically submit when those 45 minutes are up, even if the student isn't finished with the test. So those are the parameters that are set for this test, and I want to set different parameters for my special needs student. So let's cancel this test, and we're going to set up teams by going to Manage, the Teams hyperlink. And it's very important to remember that you have to set up 2 teams when you're setting up teams for this purpose, because you're changing the parameters of one assignment. So when you change those parameters, you don't want everybody to see those changes. You want only the students on a particular team to see it. So all of your other students have to be put on a different team so that they see the parameters that are set for the whole class. So let's add our first team, and we can call this Special Needs. Okay, and because the purpose of this team is not to share files and do group work, we'll leave file sharing disabled. Click Save, and now we have to choose from the roster which students we want to put on this special needs team by putting a check mark next to the student's name. And I'm just going to choose one student, Add Selected. And you can now see an icon next to that student's name and the team name, Special Needs. We're done. And now we have to create the second team, which is going to include every other student in the class. And we can just call this Rest of the Class. You can call them anything you want. Again, leave file sharing disabled. Click Save. And now you have to put a check mark next to every other student in the class except for that special needs student. And when you're finished, you're going to click Add Selected. There is another page of students in here, but before we can go to that page and add those students, we have to add these students. So you click Add Selected, and you can now see the icons appear next to those students' name with the name of their team next to their name. Now you can go to your next page and add the rest of your students the same way by putting check marks next to each student's name. And when you're finished, you click Add Selected, and now you're done and you have the 2 teams established here. Now you're ready to go back to lessons and set the parameters for the assignments that you want to appear differently to your special needs student. And as I said, we're going to work only with one test. But if you wanted to change every test for a special needs student or several assignments, you'd have to do each one individually. So let's go back to test 4. Go to Settings, Advanced Access, and in the View Restrictions, Angel defaults to Students, All Teams, but you want to change All Teams to Selected Teams. And here are the 2 teams that we just created, and we'll put check marks next to each one. We want everyone in the class to be able to see this test, in other words, both of these teams, but we want this team to see the test differently, the special needs team. So once we get our check marks in place, we click the hyperlink for the special needs team, and when the custom team settings window opens, you click Advanced, and then you change the parameters over here that you want changed. For this student, we'll just change the amount of time he has to take. We'll give him double time. We may not want the test to automatically submit the way it does for other students, so we'll leave this unchecked. If I don't want to show the save button, I'll click here. The only thing I'm going to change is the amount of time, and we'll give him 2 attempts instead of 1 attempt. And up here, put a 1 under team priority, which ensures that these settings will override any other settings for this test for this particular team. And when we're finished setting the different parameters, we click Save and Close. And you can see that this team now has an asterisk next to its name, and you're told over here that asterisks next to team names means that that team has special parameters or custom settings for it. Okay, we're finished, and we'll click Save. And now let's look at this test from the perspective of the special needs student. We'll go into the user preview, and we'll look at it only from the special needs student is already checked, and we'll begin the preview. Go back to lessons and look at it the way this special needs student is going to see it. Come down here to test 4, and when this student clicks on test 4, notice that he has 90 minutes instead of 45 minutes. He has 2 attempts instead of 1 attempt to take this test. And when he takes the test, instead of seeing the test appear 1 question at a time, he sees the entire test appear. So he is seeing this test differently from the rest of the class. Okay, let's cancel this view. And I want to show you one more very important thing. Whenever you're creating teams for confidential purposes, such as a student needing extra time on a test, anything from disability services that requires special parameters on an assignment or a test where you're creating teams, you should hide both the special needs team and the all other students team, and I'm going to show you why. Let's go to a student preview, and we're going to look at it from all students' perspective. We're going to look at the class that way. I'm going to begin the preview. If you have course mail enabled in your class, students are able to filter course mail by teams. I don't have course mail enabled in this class, but I do have the roster enabled. This is the student view of their class roster, and when they click course roster, they can filter it by teams. And they can see that there's a special needs team, and they can see who's on it. And this is a breach of confidentiality, so you need to hide these 2 teams so that students can't see that teams are set up for these purposes. If you're setting teams up for other purposes like group projects, you don't have to hide the teams, and you can allow students to filter their roster and their discussion forums and their course mail this way. So let's get out of this preview and go back to the Manage tab. Go back to Teams. And you can actually do this while you're creating the teams, but I want to show you how to do it afterwards so I could give you a good explanation of why you're doing it. You go to the settings for each team, and when you're actually creating the team, you were in this screen, and all you have to do is click Yes next to Hidden, and do this for both teams. Okay, we'll go here, and Yes to Hidden. Now students cannot see that these teams exist. I'm going to exit the Teams editor, and we'll go back in here and do a preview from all students' perspective and take a look at the course roster now. When they click Communicate, any student in the class, and click Course Roster, if they try to filter by teams, it says there are currently no teams. This way they can't see that somebody is on a special needs team.